Hello and welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I am Desiree Holmes Scherini, your host. And today we're going to cover some relationship stuff. We got a lot on here. And in particular, dealing with when you are the empath and someone you're dealing with falls on that narcissism scale. And narcissism often falls also along the scale of, say, narcissism, sociopath, way up to psychopath. But we're going to stay down in the level of narcissistic personality. Not necessarily, it may not be a full-blown personality disorder, diagnosable, but each of us has some level of narcissism, say from 1 to 10. There's a certain level of narcissistic traits that are healthy, which mean you stand up for yourself or you see your point of view, but then there's, as the traits increase, they become more less healthy, more profound, and really, really bad for relationships. Now, on the empath side, each of us normally should have some level of empathy, where we care about others, where we are giving of ourselves and our time and our emotions. And again, if you're too high on that, sometimes you will end up being on the, losing side of a relationship. And, not like there's winners and losers, but yes, relationships can create that if you have someone high on the narcissism or sociopath level and someone high on the empath scale. So it creates, say, people pleasers are too high on certain levels, and I'm all about myself and nothing about you is too high on the narcissist level. So now that I've kind of thrown out some really rough definitions there so you know what I'm talking about, we can get rid of that and simply talk about the traits, the personality, the behaviors of what happens in certain relationships. And so this topic, the goal of the topic is to help the person who has empathy, is to help that person to learn what they may come up against and tactics that they may encounter, and also ways to maybe elevate not their level of empathy, but elevate their level of assertiveness and self-care. Okay, so yes, it's great to be a caring, loving, kind, giving person. But there does come a point where you can go overboard and forget yourself. Forget about being kind, caring, and loving to yourself, because you might find yourself doing and giving to others instead of honoring yourself and taking care of yourself first. Part of the reason I'm even talking about this is I just had a conversation with Sandy Glaze on her show, on her YouTube platform, where we talked about self-esteem, self-worth. Another reason this is forefront in my mind right now is I had a client last week that I did some, I would call it inner child work with, and I often find that a useful tool for clients that end up, it may be coming to me because they haven't been acknowledging their own needs. And so let's start with the idea of the inner child. One of the exercises I often use to help someone take a step back and realize, am I caring for myself the way I should, is to picture themselves as a little child. And in your imagination, bring forth the idea that you are the caretaker of this child. Okay, and see yourself as this little child. And that little child is inside of each of us. Okay, and that little child needs love, attention, affection. And sometimes when, as adults, we may, as empathic adults, we may get to the point where we aren't looking out for that little child. So an exercise you can use is to stop and think of yourself as a little child. And would you let that little child be abused, taken advantage of, gaslit, cheated, lied to? If you were parenting that little child and you were able to be there and you saw someone bullying that child, or you saw that child doing things that they shouldn't be doing for their own well-being in order to please someone else, you would step in and say, hold on. And you would stand up to that bully, or you would stop the child and say, that's not safe. Don't do that. Let's take a step back and let me teach you the right way. You would not let someone hurt that little child. But what happens often is we might come to a conclusion that we want to be loving and kind and giving, and so we don't take care of ourselves. We're not looking out for that little child. And I'm not saying we are little children, but if we get that dynamic in our head to remember that part of us needs to be watched out for, and we're the only one who's going to do it, especially as an adult. We might give away our power, give away our self-esteem, expecting it to come from someplace else. And when we get too much like that, if we too much want to be accepted by a group or by a person, we give up a part of ourselves instead of standing up and knowing how to take care of ourselves with or without whatever that entity is that we would give ourselves up to. So let's look at this now in relation to what happens when you are someone who's loving, giving, kind, and aren't aware of this dynamic that you are giving away yourself in order to believe that that makes you happier. Is that the person who's high on the narcissism or sociopath levels, someone who is more concerned with what they get, what they need. They're not a win-win person, they're an I-win person. And the times that they will give or show affection, love, or whatever is often, unfortunately, as a means to an end for what they want. That it's not done out of like, I really want you to be happy, and so this is what I know makes you happy, and so I'm doing it even though it's not necessarily going to lead to any benefit for myself. That's really loving. But someone higher on that narcissist, sociopath kind of thinking dynamic will say, okay, I'm going to give you this because I know that if I do that, then I'm going to get something. I'm going to get this, or I'm going to get sex or money or status or whatever it is that I'm going to achieve through showing, pretending to show love. So those two often attract each other because one is looking for acceptance and love and wants to give, and the other wants to take. And if you find you're ever in a relationship where you just aren't feeling, eventually it'll creep up on the person that they don't feel like things are fair. And when I say relationship, that could be interpersonal, that could be a partner, a friendship, it could be work, it could be society, it could be a relationship with the government that you live under. It could be any sort of relationship where there's you start to feel uneasy because you're like, well, I did all this, I don't understand. I was trying to be nice, or I wanted to be kind and loving, but this person or this entity doesn't respond with love, or they only give me love when it's something they want. And I guess I could talk in circles around this. It's a dynamic. It is. And a healthy relationship is one where both parties are winners. Sometimes it may sway, but what happens if they're not is resentment builds up on the side of the person who's the giver. There's a resentment, and then this can shift to someone who doesn't understand their assertiveness or is not self-aware. This can turn into some passive aggressive behavior coming out, that person who was giving, loving, give may then under resentment become passive aggressive as their way of trying to establish some sort of assertiveness, because they don't know how to be positively assertive. That's probably a whole different, I will make a new episode, make a note to myself, another episode on positive assertiveness, how to be assertive without being aggressive, without yelling or being angry, but simply being calm and self-assured in your communications. So why am I talking about this? Because we see this dynamic in all sorts of relationships. And sometimes for the person who generally comes from their heart and expects the same from someone else, there is such a surprise when they sometimes call it the mask comes off the narcissist. The person is shocked that this, we all are often, when someone doesn't think like we think or doesn't feel like we feel. And it's even more shocking when someone has the empathy is just not there, that they do not and cannot put themselves in your shoes. So we often hear, oh, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Empaths are really good at doing that. Someone high on the empathy scale. It doesn't have to be an empath, like feeling everyone's, as we often think of, empathy is probably more the better term to use. Someone who has empathy and someone who is fair-minded can easily put themselves in someone else's shoes and say, well, if I were them, I can understand how this and this and this, right? But someone who lacks empathy can't. So this is where that relationship dynamic can also get in the way, that the person who has empathy will naturally say, well, okay, I want to be nice because I know that this is how this person feels or thinks, and I want to be kind, but they won't get it back. And the other person, entity, whatever it is, will not respond in kind, literally in kind, will not respond in kind. And that's when it's a shock to the person who feels empathy and wants a fair resolution to, say, if there's a problem, dealing with basically the rock. It's like, rock, why did you stub my toe? And the rock just sits there. There's no, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see you coming. Whatever it may be, that it's that sad realization that the one on the narcissistic scale cannot understand or put themselves in your shoes, because their world is, what can I get from myself? How can I be satisfied? And there's not a piece of anything in there about how can you be happy too. It's, what do I need? How can I create what I want? And that might mean using you, cheating you, lying to you, but your needs are not important to them at all. That's like, why would I care about what you need? Why would I care about your feelings? No. This fair stuff is BS. No, me, mine, I. and this is what happens. So for you out there listening, you might think to some of the relationships you've had and where maybe you've come up against that sad realization that there's not going to be a fair, kumbaya realization or resolution with certain parties. And what does that mean? It means you're going to get a lesson in assertiveness. It means you have choices coming up. You can learn assertiveness. You can learn to take a look at that inner child, that person inside, that one that you need to step up and look out for. And it may even make it easier, like I said, to see it as something external from yourself, because your nature is not to fight. Your nature is to give. Your nature is to say, oh, okay, what else can I do to people please? Okay, if you're, on that higher level of being, empathetic, your nature is not to fight. So you need to see that person inside, that child that you need to fight for, and say, no. Back to saying no, this isn't going to happen. The answer is no. And this is what is going to happen. And this is what needs to happen to be fair. And you'll get pushback from someone who's on that me, only my needs should be met scale. And it's a lesson. It is. It's just, you'll be glad when you actually do. It feels better and better. And as a matter of fact, what's interesting about this thing coming up in your life is that you will gain a new respect for yourself. You'll gain comfort in your skin. It's so uncomfortable when you first do it, but the more you do it, the more it's okay. There's that cartoon character, I think it's Maxine. There is something funny about age and wisdom, I guess, where there comes a point, as people get older, they're like, I'm sorry, I don't care about you. They don't even say, I'm sorry, I don't care. They're like, no, not doing it. Or just not editing and not, it's not becoming more narcissistic or self, fulfilling or whatever. It's not about only me. It's more about, I'm going to look out for me, and I'm going to say what I need, and I'm going to share my opinion if someone asks, without worrying about that you're whether you like it or not. That my mom, her memory and such was getting less reliable as she got older. But I remember her, one of her favorite foods was that cream of crab soup. What's it called? Take after her, my memory. But and so we were in a beautiful restaurant that's well known for its good food, and she ordered the soup, and the waiter, having been told this is her favorite soup, and she was looking forward to having it at this restaurant, and she had had some of the soup, and he came around saying, so how did you like the soup? Expecting her to say it was good or fine or very delicious. And she says, oh, not so good. And isn't that great to just have that freedom to say, no, that's not working for me. Yeah. And so this is an example of allowing that those of you who have that empathetic, heavy duty empathetic streak, allowing yourself to say, this isn't working for me, and I don't think it's fair. And so here's what I need. Picture that child and step in front of that child if someone's being a bully, someone's trying to take advantage of that child that you are now in charge of, your inner child, if you want to see it that way. And when you become aware and start paying attention to interpersonal relationships, business, work, whatever it is, to be able to say, no, you're not going to do that to my child. My child here is not going to take that. So let's start over here. We're going to make this fair. And even though I know that's not how you see it. and some entities, some people, the only thing they're going to see as fair is they have it all. They have it all. They have, all the money, all the power. And for those of us who expect fair, it is a sad realization that others don't want to play fair. And the essence of this story is to practice your assertiveness, stand up for yourself, and in the next broadcast, next episode, I will put forward some of the ways that you can practice that. Real short and sweet, and stay tuned. Thanks for being here, and take care of your inner child. Bye.